Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 1 through 9. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. I say, keep the king's command, because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme. And who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. For he does not know what is to be. For who can tell him how it will be? No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who were given to it. All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man to his hurt. You may notice in many Bibles that verse 1 is indented, similar to the structure of chapter 7, where proverbial statements are recorded. And notice in this case, this is written in a question-answer format. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. Wisdom is the subject. It is described as knowing the interpretation of a thing, therefore making a man's face shine. Knowledge and wisdom in verse 1 is connected to a happy countenance or a shining face. There's something very simple here. Knowledge and wisdom produces joy. It doesn't mean everything will be okay in your immediate circumstance here under the sun. But if you know where you're headed in life in the right direction, according to God's instructions, and you navigate life with wisdom from Him, that has impact on your mood, your attitude, your countenance. As we learn and gain knowledge and use that knowledge in the way we live, our face can shine. Now, go ahead and connect this with the next part of the passage. Keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. From this we get part of wisdom is submitting to authority while we're here under the sun. Good order involves this wise course of action on the part of citizens. Keep the king's commands. But this is more than just practical. This may remind us of Romans 13 in the New Testament, where Paul expressed the necessity of Christians obeying the laws of the land. God's oath means God set up civil government and expects us to be compliant. Let's be wise. It says, keep the king's command. Living against the authority of the land or government is not wise and will not contribute to your happiness here on earth. It is important to know your place as a citizen and to understand the necessity of governmental authority and determine that you will not provoke the king's wrath. Rather, you will keep the king's command. This is part of wisdom before God. Now, this was written in a time when there was a monarchical government. We know that Solomon was king in Jerusalem, and God gave particular rights and charges to those kings. But there's a broader principle here to be embraced, especially when you consider this in the light of what Jesus said about rendering unto Caesar, and what Paul and Peter said about civil government. Government is necessary. God has ordained that there be governing authorities. And while we may not always agree or like how government works, or we may take issue with the people in charge, God expects us to be peaceful, productive citizens who comply with the law. It is wise to do so. These verses give us practical guidance and warning for dealing with earthly government during our sojourn here on earth. I'm thinking of Daniel, who was carried off into Babylon, where he was trained in the court of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel kept God's law, and part of his wisdom was to not engage in an uprising. Verse 3 in Ecclesiastes 8 brings to our attention two valuable pieces of advice. Do not be hasty to go from the presence of the king. Literally, this would mean don't walk out on the king. In some countries today, where there is a king or queen, your physical approach to the person must be according to established protocol. You're not supposed to just turn and walk off. Generally, this is about respect for the office. Don't quickly dismiss the right of the ruler, the authority of his office. Number 2, do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. Before you get on the wrong side of the king, better stop and think about how much power he has. I understand the kings of Israel are not equivalents of our presidents or governors. It is given in all this discussion that there is a freedom of expression that we have in our system that did not obtain in Solomon's time. But the principle remains of being wise and respectful with reference to the governing authorities. Verse 4, for the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? In our system, with our freedom, we are actually allowed to question our leaders and their policies, to disagree, but when we do so, and the way we do it should take this advice into account. Let's be wise. I want us to look now at verses 5 through 7. Much of this is about a wise heart. A wise heart seeks peace, obeys the rulers, avoids the evil that can take place if you become riotous. The wise heart seeks to find a proper time and place and manner. There is a time and a way for everything. In the Christian Standard Bible, for every activity there is a right time and a right procedure, even though man's troubles are heavy on him. That's so important as you deal with people and events here under the sun. Instead of just opening your mouth, rather than impulsive rebellion or some outburst, be wise, calm down, seeking to discover and find the right time and the right way. Prayer can become your highest resource. Careful Bible study, consulting godly people. We must not just act in some sort of unrestrained or undisciplined way when we have a cause, suffer an offense, or believe something needs to be said or done. There is a time and a way for everything. Solomon acknowledges there is trouble for man on earth, but there's a right way, a right time, a right attitude. Verse 7 brings us here on earth to the reality that we're always working with the unknown. We don't know everything. We cannot know what is ahead, for he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? Solomon, sometimes called the wisest man on earth, says to us, there are always unknowns. So let us seek wise methods, restrain ourselves by the Word of God, pray about what we do and what we undertake, and find a proper time and a proper way. Verse 8, no man has power to retain the Spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. I heard of a man who sold life insurance policies, and on his business card he quoted Ecclesiastes 8, verse 8, "No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death." Somebody asked the salesman one time, "How does this play with people who don't believe the Bible?" And he said, "Oh, they believe this part. The death rate in the human race stands at 100%. In all my pressing daily routines, in all my plans and purposes, in all that we think and do and say, we need to keep well in mind that we will die. We cannot keep that from happening. And to that reality, Solomon adds, there's no discharge from war. As a general rule, you cannot just end a war by walking away from combat, not without consequence. It's called desertion. We are soldiers of Christ. We cannot walk away from the battle. There are some things we just cannot change, no matter how much we may dislike them. Nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. One cannot sin to be delivered from sin. So death, war, sin, realities of life under the sun that we cannot just walk away from. Verse 9, "All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man to his hurt." Solomon looked at life on earth. He applied his mind to understanding what he observed, and he often concluded that men have power to their detriment. He seems here in verse 9 to come back to his caution about the king and how to respond to power and authority. The primary idea in all of this that we're looking at in Ecclesiastes 8 is wisdom and caution and restraint. Seek a proper time and way. Understand that you do not know what will happen. The wise way to live is by submitting to the sovereignty of God and entrusting our lives, body and soul, to the authority and the love of Jesus Christ. I'm approaching now verses 10 through 13. "Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place, and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. The heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God." I like the way verse 10 is rendered in the NIV. "Then too I saw the wicked buried, those who used to come and go from the holy place, and receive praise in the city where they did this. This too is meaningless." We've seen this many times in Ecclesiastes. Solomon rattles our minds with realities of life on earth, things that bother us, wicked people who are not exposed and punished. In fact, they're celebrated, they're praised, they have leadership positions. They come and go onto the scene, even go in and out of holy places. Not a word is spoken against their error. They live and die just like the righteous. Verse 11 says, "Sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily." So the living who are evil take heart. And because they're not punished on the spot, they just continue in their sin. Solomon was bothered by that, and we are disturbed by it when the bad people get away with it, at least while they're here, but not ultimately, of course. In verses 10 through 13, it looks like the wicked get away without punishment. It may be true while they're here, no punishment is applied, but it will not be well for those who are wicked, who do not fear God. I'm going next to verses 14 through 17. There is a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. And I commend joy, for man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful, for this will go well with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he will not find out. One main idea: don't try to figure everything out that happens here on earth. Look at that last phrase, he cannot find out. Injustices, enigmas, vanities, questions, misfortunes, it all happens here on earth, and man cannot figure it all out. You can drive yourself crazy trying to figure everything out. Some events and circumstances cannot be perfectly analyzed. What to do? Take life from God one day at a time, and be certain you are among those who fear God. It says over in Proverbs 24:21 and 22, my son, fear the Lord and the king. That's all wrapped up in Ecclesiastes 8. And do not join with those who do otherwise, for disaster will arise suddenly from them, and who knows the ruin that will come from them both. Thank you for being with us in this study.